Hi guys, Squall here, and welcome to another TMCN episode. Again, it's been a little while since I've done one. I really need to do these more regularly. I do apologise about that. Now, TMCN, just briefly, is the Q&A type video. It's where you ask the questions, and I drive a truck and try to answer them with my own opinions and thoughts on the questions. The theme of this particular video is the future of simulation. And, as ever, I need your questions for the next video. So the theme for the next video will be difference in generations. This was suggested by That Scary Guy. Difference in generations. I kind of think that that's a little bit subjective, so I'll leave that to you to decide what that means. You can submit questions on that theme, difference in generations. You can submit your questions by clicking on the link in the video description. And in there, you can also suggest another theme. So if you've got a question, just ask away and then put your theme suggestion at the end of it. Try to restrict to just one question at a time. So you can submit more questions if you want to, but just keep it to one question per submission along with your theme suggestion. Now, today we are in Bucarest. The weather is absolutely appalling, as you may have gathered. It's currently 7 AM. And we're going to be shortly delivering this, which is a piece of, I think it's a piece of farming equipment. We'll just have a quick look at the route that we'll be taking today. We're coming out here out of Bucarest, and we're going to be heading west, then we're going up through Arad and into Budapest. That's where we're heading. You may have also noticed that the HUD layout is slightly different, and also you may be wondering what the truck is. The HUD is a mod called Hemmel's Route Advisor. As you can see along the bottom, it kind of changes the way that the HUD's displayed. If you press F3, it will, of course, come up with the mini-map, but again in a different position. And if you press F5, it will cycle through the different maps, as per usual. If you press F6, it will display the cargo and destination up there. You can see there's a Liebherr LR1300, 23 tons, F7, F8, and so on. So it just lays things out a little bit differently, but if you keep pressing F3, it will cycle through these modes, so you can have it without the sat-nav displaying, but keep that key information at the bottom. It's quite nice. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, to be honest, but I'm seeming to be warming to it. It's called Hemmel's Route Advisor. The truck itself is a mod. It's the MAZ 6422M. It only has one chassis and one cabin, but it has quite a wider range of engines, and each engine comes with one transmission. I suggest you play with the engines and transmissions because some of them are a bit odd, let's just say that. However, the inside of the truck is really rather nice, actually, particularly the dash. I love the dash on this thing. Let me just start it up. If you look at the dash display, it's just got this wonderful layout. I know a lot of it's actually nicked from a Volvo in terms of its layout, but I love the kind of light blue, the light bluey green, turquoise colour. It's really rather pleasant, particularly at night as well. You can see quite nicely. If you press the I key, it does, of course, cycle through the different options. So that's cruise control, set, and bottom right there is your CC for your cruise control setting there as well. So it is laid out nicely. The inside's not bad. I've got my sandwich there. Sorry, I've not had my breakfast yet. And the bag. And, you know, it's not bad. Not a bad little truck. It's got these little wing mirror things as well that give you a wide-angle view. There are a few niggles. The steering wheel is a bit odd, and it's not adjustable. Like, there's no steering wheel adjustment, so you'll need to position your seat in order to get a good view. Sat-nav location's pretty good, though. So anyway, that's enough about the truck and the route advisor. Of course, if you look in the link in the video description, you can get access to my mod spreadsheet. Go to the mod spreadsheet, click on the ETS2 tab, and you'll find the MAZ 6422 and Hemmel's Route Advisor in there, along with a lot of other mods that I've used. Let's get the triple wiper blades going. Look at this. Not very long, these wiper blades, unfortunately. Do we need the beacon on today, I wonder? We don't look particularly long or overweight. I think we can probably get away without it. Anyway, let's hit the road, and then... Oh, the other thing is, when you press the parking brake, there's no visible indication that the parking brake is on. So, you know, that's another thing that will catch you out as well. Oh, this thing's heavy. It also has a very heavy flywheel on it. So it does take a little bit of time to get going. I did try it with a small engine, and it can barely move itself. I think the smallest engine it does is like a 240 brake. Don't recommend it, to be honest. Go for something a little bit more meaty. See if we can punch out of here before the traffic appears. Hopefully we can leave this weather behind us shortly. Also notice the little route advisor at the bottom puts your speed down there, so it's a bit easier to see. So yeah, I quite like it. Tops out at about 2400 RPMs, that's where it starts to give up on its power. But as long as you're aware of the way it... the gearing as well is a little bit odd. You need to split your gears properly if you're using manual shift. Anyway, let's get on with the questions. So, on the subject of the future of simulations, the first question is from OJC31. He says, what kind of new simulation games would you like? What kind of new simulation games would you like? Well, OJ, I think everybody agrees that we'd like a decent farming simulator. I think we kind of hoped that Cattle and Crops was going to be that, but sadly I don't think it's holding up to what we wanted. I would like to see a farming sim where, you know, you can get inside the vehicles and there's proper physics on the tractors. You can click all the switches, you get damage, you get terrain deformation, that's a big one. Terrain deformation in farming is incredibly important. You know, if I dig troughs out of the ground, I want to feel that as I'm driving along. Equipment damage if I don't use it correctly. In Farming Sim, I can just chuck things around and there's absolutely no damage model. You know, if you did it in real life, you break the equipment left, right and centre. But you could level these points against Truck Sim as well, to be fair, and that's another thing I'd like, as well as Farming Sim, is a detailed Truck Sim where I can click all these buttons. Real world maps, perhaps, in Farming Sim, that would be nice. I would like, also, like a My Summer Car for buses and trucks and tractors, but perhaps without the everything trying to kill you aspect that comes with My Summer Car. So just the detail of My Summer Car in terms of assembling a bus or a truck or a tractor. Like, I suppose like a blend of, what's that game? Car Mechanic Sim. Like a blend of that with My Summer Car with what we already have. I think it would be really fun. I think My Summer Car would do well to add more vehicles as well. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I would like to see, I think. Just more detail, more realism, and ultimately just more fun. And if they brought a multiplayer aspect to all of that as well, that would be even better. How much fuel have we got? 2/3 of a tank. Let's hold the revs up here. So once you get used to the engine, it pulls quite nicely, but the gears can catch you out. If you lose RPMs, you'll struggle to get them back. It does have a heavy flywheel, this thing. But once you learn how to drive it, it's not a bad little truck, actually. It's a shame it's only got one chassis and cabin, though. Right, looks clear, going that way. Second question comes from Brandon Greff, I think it is. Brandon Greff or Brandon Keefe? Brandon Greff. Do you think simulation will ever take over airports in the future? Do you think simulation will ever take over airports? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, Brandon. Simulation taking over an airport. In some respects, it's already happening in terms of reality enhancement. If you remember my Heathrow video, I did touch on this subject. London City Airport has already got cameras up on the control tower now. And the controllers can sit over at Nats in Swanwick, and the cameras basically send a real feed back to the controllers in Swanwick, but it's overlaid with extra information. Like, it can pick up the location of the plane and overlay the tail number, the altitude, like information that they normally see on the radar is projected onto the screen. So the controller sits there, is surrounded 180 degrees by screens, and he can see a live feed blended with the virtual reality information, or enhanced reality, which sounds amazing, but it's actually happening now, and it pretty much is going to be the future. So controllers won't ever need to sit in the tower anymore. They can sit in a different part of the country potentially, and still get a better view of what's going on in the airfield, because even if they can't, and that also leads them to, you know, the idea that they can then safely land aircraft that they can't even see, because the computer knows where they are and it's showing them where it is, so they can still bring them in. Whereas at the moment, if the weather closes in, they have to basically reduce their minimums down, and separate and increase the separations and stuff. So it is a technology that's there now, and I only see that growing, to be honest. I only see the blending of reality and computer information not just in the aviation world, in many fields, to be honest with you. I think it's a real benefit. I hope that answered your question, because I'm not 100% sure what you were getting at. Right, next question is from Martin3148, and he says, do you think the future of simulation lies in VR? Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? I think the whole VR thing, you could argue that it's been overcooked. Like, the first generation VR stuff has perhaps not taken over the world quite like everybody expected or hoped that it might. And everybody's going on about, you know, next-gen VR now, increased resolutions and all that kind of thing. It's a weird one. I think it's pretty unknown how the whole VR thing is going to progress, to be honest with you. I think VR has the same goal as simulation, and that is immersion. Immersion is what we're trying to get at when we're simulating, and VR is trying to add another level of immersion, ultimately. So it does, I think VR does and always will have a part to play in immersion, but obviously new technology is going to be required, and technology is advancing all the time. The visuals are just one aspect. Like, if you look out the window of this game now, the visuals are pretty good. So you could argue, excuse me, you could argue that simulation is doing quite well on the visual side of things. That being said, if you put a VR headset on, you dumb down the resolution that you've become accustomed to, because it just can't, current technology just can't really cope with it. But then again, there's other aspects to simulation, isn't there? There's acceleration, the feeling of acceleration, the feeling of gravity and weight, smells, the immersive sound. There's lots of aspects of true immersion. So VR really is only one aspect of it, and it deals primarily with the visuals. It tries to take away everything around you and show you just what the computer is generating. That's what VR tries to do. So yeah, it will always have a part to play, but I don't know if the future lies in VR. A lot of people at the moment, like, the headsets are too cumbersome and big for a lot of people, so that's going to have to change. We're going to need something small and lightweight, or something that sits perhaps on the surface of your eye, or just in front of your eye. I don't know what the future's going to be. But the goal is always the same, immersion. So we'll have to wait and see, I think. This thing, when you get below 1,000 RPMs, really is just not happy at all. You hear the engine doing weird things now. And also, I'm speeding. Naughty boy. There we go, so let's get under 80. Next question, GTA fan. Do you think ETS2 will see AIs walking in and out of buildings and getting in and out of their cars, pedestrians crossing the street at crosswalks? Do I think that will happen in ETS2? I would say not. I mean, ultimately, it's a question for SCS to answer, isn't it? It's where that sits on the development priority list. It has been requested. I've talked about it before. I've even asked Pavel directly. I see no signs of it at the moment, so I can only assume that it's not a high priority ticket for them. So, in ETS2, my guess would be probably not, but I don't know for sure. That's just my opinion. Next question is from Halvard Moberg, and he says, I remember you mentioned once that you would like to see a world simulator, which would basically be a real-life sim, so to speak. Do you think this will become a reality? Again, that's a crystal ball question. I think it's something that a lot of people have thought about, you know, not just in our generation, in previous generations, you know, the sci-fi guys have also thought about it. It's a kind of thing that it's a long-term goal, isn't it, really? It requires technology and a lot of effort, and somebody's got to finance the whole thing. It's a huge undertaking. I think, I mean, just thinking about one aspect of it, just one aspect of a world simulator, and that would be something like flying. Now take the X-Plane platform, right? The X-Plane platform is built up over 10 years. It's been built up. And all it deals with is flying. And inside X-Plane, you've got thousands of airports, airfields, scenery, And most of it's like custom built, and the community's done a lot of it as well, you know, which has taken hundreds of people to build. And that's only a fraction of what's out there. You know, to build a detailed world for you to walk around in is absolutely daunting. Because they'd have to do it for the planes, they'd have to do it for trucks, trains, buses, any vehicle you can think of, any form of transport you can think of. You know, and whatever compromises you make, like, there's going to be people who say, well, that's not real, is it? Because you've not implemented traffic lights failing. You know, there's always a level of detail that you can always go to. Whenever you build a game, you always have to decide what level of detail you want to cut off at. Because otherwise you'll never finish the project, quite frankly. So I don't know if something like this is even possible. And then there's the gameplay side of it. If you think about what Identity's trying to do, or what EVE Online has done, like creating economies, building and trading, buying and selling, then you think about the security of the system, where hackers will try to get in and, you know, give themselves money or teleport people around or whatever it is. Like, would a project like that ever even get done? Who's going to back it? Who's going to finance it? Star Citizen, which I'll mention later on, is already a huge undertaking, which has taken tens of millions of dollars, and even that's only just set in space, really. You know, so yeah, it's a massive maybe it'll spin off from Star Citizen, who knows? Who knows? It'll be interesting to see. It's going to take, I think, crowdfunding on a global scale to finance a project like that. Let me put it that way. Let's get down to 50 here. More roadworks plaguing us. Slow down. There we go. So yeah, but thanks for the question. Hope I've answered it. Next one. Ben Young, the Lego Stobart guy. Ben Young says, do you think that in the future simulation will only be designed to be played on PC? Do I think in the future that simulation will only be designed to be played on PC? Right now you can get flight sims on your phone. You can even get VR on your phone. You know, you put your phone inside like a weird cardboard headset. The Google did that with theirs. So, why would it only end up on PC? Mobile devices are more prevalent than PCs. That's for sure. Everybody's got a mobile these days, you know? Everybody. And they're powerful as well. Like, I mean, the phone in your pocket is way more powerful than the things that took us to the moon. You know, it's nuts the amount of power you've got in your pocket. What you can do with it. You can look up places on the internet. It's just crazy what you can do with what's in your pocket. However, one second, let me just get in the right lane here. There is a limiting factor to mobile devices when it comes to simulation anyway. And that's equipment. Equipment and immersion. Yeah? On PC, we have probably the largest variety of peripherals because the PC is, after all, an open and ongoing platform. Whereas mobile devices and consoles, they're not. They iterate through. That's not to say that you wouldn't be able to get equipment. I mean, who knows? If a phone became as powerful as a PC, but miniaturized, it's entirely possible that you would then get devices to plug into it. Yeah? Drive VR headsets or steering wheel inputs and all the rest. There's no reason why a phone can't do it. Why a mobile device can't do it. Come on, into gear. There's no reason why not. It's just down to an amount of power that you can get into something so small. So to answer the question, do I think it will only be played on PC? I think the answer to that has to be no. Like, my gut instinct tells me that technology gets more and more powerful and more miniaturized. That's what it always does. The trend is always in that direction. So if we project forward 50 years, what kind of power are you going to have in your pocket? Or wearing? You know, probably some pretty insane stuff, I would have thought. And at that point, the concept of a PC may not even exist. So I'd have to say no to your question. I don't think it will only be played on PC. But I think the PC will be very significant for at least the next couple of decades, I would say. And then we'll see. Next question from Code 4. Do you think simulation games will become more niche or more mass market in the future? I think simulation has always been a niche. It's, you know, like FPS, for example, is quite big in terms of gaming, whereas simulation is very much a niche. However, simulation isn't just restricted to the consumer market. Simulation finds itself in the professional market as well. So it depends where you want to draw the line on how much of a niche it is and what you consider to be mass market. Is it mass market just for consumers? In which case, simulation's a niche. However, with the introduction of VR, simulation has stepped over the line, hasn't it? Because, you know, there are many sim games now that you can get on VR, like Job Simulator, where you can simulate having a job and doing kind of menial tasks and things like this. So simulation, I think, has become more of a mass market thing, but it's still niche in terms of everything else. And as a training tool, I think simulation will only continue to grow. So I think the future's bright for sim. Whether it will, in quotes, make a mass market, well, ultimately, if we're starting to head towards simulating reality, what we talked about earlier, the world simulator, if that ever came to pass, that would be by definition mass market, because everybody would be playing it, wouldn't they? So I think the answer is it will tend towards mass market. I don't think it will ever stay niche. I think it will only ever grow. Next question from N. Avellino. In the advent of simulation as a primary tool for training ranging from civilian to military use, in your opinion, do hands-on experience on the real thing beat simulators? Interesting one there. Simulation is driven ultimately by the real world, and the thing is about the real world is it's very unpredictable, it's very, very varied, and you can't pause it, and that's the key difference between simulation and reality. You can't pause reality. You can pause a simulator. You can also construct scenarios in a simulator and then repeat them over and over again and use it for training purposes, yeah? Whenever there's a, you know, like the whole Sully thing, right? Sully twin engine failure, that kind of thing at such a low altitude had never happened before. You bet that is in a sim now for training pilots. You better believe it, because when something fails, the next thing to do is put it in a simulator and train for it. But you can't train for every possible scenario. They have to happen. You have to either think of them or they have to happen, and then you can put it in the sim and train for it. Apart from maybe Captain Kirk's Kobayashi Maru, whatever it was. the undefeatable thing, I can't remember, the undefeatable scenario, which was again a simulation in Star Trek. I think it's hard to do this in the real world. I think skill levels have improved through the use of technology. You know, it's now a mandatory part of employment. If you're going to be a commercial pilot, you have to go through simulation exercises, and you're tested like every 6 months, I think it is, as a commercial pilot. You come back into the sim and you go through your checks to make sure you can deal with emergencies and all kinds, and they'll always throw something at you that you're not really sure what it's going to be, and you have to handle it. My night rating for my plane, I've got my PPL license, right? I want to do my night rating. I'm going in the sim first. I'm going to spend an hour in the simulator, which runs X-Plane, by the way, and flying out of Southend Airport back to Earl's Cone in the sim, because then he can pause it and he can show me what it looks like at night. Because when you're flying, the world looks very different at night, and if you're trying to navigate it visually, you don't want to be up in the plane for the first time. You want to be on a sim, because it's just that much better. So, does hands-on experience beat the real thing? Currently, yes. But think about it this way. When you're in a sim and you can no longer distinguish the fact that you're in a sim from reality, when immersion has come to the point where simulation, your brain just literally thinks that it's real, are you still in a simulator anymore? Will people just completely lose themselves inside of a sim? That's another question entirely, isn't it? Which brings me to the next question. From the Penguin 36, he says, Paul, what would your ideal perfect simulation game be? Or what would be your ideal perfect simulation game? I think one where the immersion level is so great that you can do things that you've always wanted to do and you feel like you've experienced them, but you didn't. It was just a simulation. And that's kind of like the whole Total Recall thing, isn't it? That's what the film... Hello. That's what the film Total Recall was about. It was about implanting memories so that you think that you've been there, but you've not. Because what is your reality anyway? Your reality is a collection of your memories and your senses. That's what reality is to you. So if you can trick the senses or implant the memories, as far as you're concerned, it happened. It's like what happened in Blade Runner, where they gave the androids memories, give them history. They thought they had a childhood. They thought they'd lived a childhood, and they hadn't. They were just implanted memories. But they didn't know that, because as far as they were concerned, in their head, that was reality. That happened. Some people theorize that we're in a simulation now. And how would you know? How would you know if you was in a sim? How does a sim, CIM, how does a sim know whether they're inside of a simulator? Is it possible to understand that you're in a simulator? I don't know. I don't think it is. Unless it's obvious, unless like you're inside like some bounding invisible wall. But apart from that, how would you really know? I don't know. Where are we going here? We're going right or straight on? Next question is from Stanislaw, and he says, whoops, do you think we will get games that wire directly into the brain and make us feel like, let's say we're in a truck sim, we're in a truck or a spaceship? Okay, so this is another one of those immersion questions, really, isn't it? Again, this is not new. This is something there's movies about this kind of thing. What we're talking about here is using technology to increase the immersion level by effectively bypassing your physical senses and tapping into your nervous system or tapping into your brain directly in order to sort of simulate a different kind of reality. Ultimately, I think that's where technology and biology collide. That's what that is. The idea of like, what was that game? What was that film, sorry? The where they plugged into the base of the spine and then you were inside of a video game. I can't remember what it was called now. But that explores that idea where you can plug directly into the spinal cord and then enter another world. And then inside this world he kind of constructed a weapon by using bits of bone and things like this in order to smuggle the weapon past security scanners because he was using a biological gun. I think there's always going to be difficulties and dangers with this. You know, it's easy to make a movie and say, oh look, we just plug into the spine because that's where the nerves are, and click, we're inside of a game, guys. You know it's not going to be that simple. Mostly because the spine contains nerves that are connected to the brain that drives motor functions, not kind of, you know, sensory or memory. Like, it's the wrong part of the brain to be plugging into for a start. But it's going to be difficult because who's going to want to be the test subject for that? You know, how are we going to find out how to connect into one person's brain when another person's brain is entirely different? Like, largely speaking, the areas of the brain are the same, but the connections are completely different in everybody. So who knows if it'll be even possible? But we'll see. It's going to be an interesting thing, but it's going to take a long time to do, I think. But that's the ultimate immersion, is just connecting straight to the brain and then, you know, firing images and sounds and smells and things at it, tricking the senses, really, I guess. It's a bit like when you've got your knee, you've got your leg over your knee and you sort of hit that part of your funny bone on your knee and it makes your leg jump. What you're doing there is tricking the nerves into operating your leg, and you're getting a reflex response. You could do the same thing, perhaps with your smell senses or other functions. Like, you could trick your inner ear into thinking you were moving, so you could perhaps simulate gravity that way by literally just tricking your inner ear into feeling like you're physically moving. I think there's a future in it, and I think it'll be interesting. But when it will happen, I don't know. But I think Stanislaw, yes, it will happen ultimately. Next question is from Nanda Kumar. He says, do you think more countries' routes need representing in the train simulator world? Or are there countries and regions which are not represented in train simulator? Oh, this is a very specific question about train sim. I've never seen in train simulator countries like India or Thailand, and I think they would be very interesting. They have a large use of trains, and I think it would be kind of interesting to explore that. I don't know why nobody's ever done a map of India in train simulator. It could be kind of fun, right? In the Indian one, you can have passengers sat on the roof and hanging out of cars and all that kind of thing, because that's what they do. They really overpack their trains because they have such a high density of population, so they have to. But there's other countries as well that don't really have much exposure in train simulator. Countries like Russia or South America or Australia. Large parts of Asia just don't have any cover. It always seems to be that the focus is on the Western world. It's on North America and Canada and the UK and mainland Western Europe, and everything outside of that. I think I've seen some stuff in Japan and China, but hardly anything. Mostly, it doesn't get covered really, and I think it should. Next question from Pusan. Are you planning to buy a hydraulic simulator chair to make your experience more realistic? Okay, the short answer to this is no. Couple of reasons. One, space. Hydraulic chair is quite big, but mainly you have to understand what it is that I do and my kind of role in all of this. I need to be able to record and stream. Yeah? That means I need a microphone near me. When I stream, I need a camera near me. I need to access my recording equipment. A hydraulic chair would be noisy. It would move me around, which is great if you're going for the sim experience, but if you're trying to record or stream yourself in that sim experience, it's a really bad idea. It just doesn't work at that point. So for me personally, no. Wait a sec, I saw 30 speed limit signs there. Everybody else seems to be smacking through at 100. Okay, that's slightly odd. I slowed down for no reason. I think, there's a huge difference between my setup and some of the setups I've seen. Some of the setups I've seen people do, for example in Truck Simulator, they've got like a full immersed cabin. In flight sims, I've seen full motion rigs and racing rigs as well. It's the same. I don't have that. I play simulators, but I also need to be able to record myself doing it. So some of the immersion equipment, if you like, is not something that I really can use properly. I'd have to have separate for that. I'd have to just for my own simulator experience. I couldn't really record it very well. Or I could, but the camera would be bouncing around and my voice would be weird because I'm getting thrown around and stuff. Which could be fun, I agree, but it's not really something I'm going to do regularly. So the answer is no. Slow down before I break the speed limit. Next question from Bandit Productions. Do you believe simulation in the future will be more immersive and affordable to those who want hardcore experience at a lower cost? Right, okay, so this is an economics question really. Technology follows the same patterns as anything else. Everything that's new and has just come out and the best stuff will always be more expensive, right? Then what happens is production kicks off and mass production kicks off, competition comes in, and that drives the price down. It's economics 101. Then something new comes out with a high price, and then, and the cycle carries on. Consumer and high-end versions of stuff will always exist. For example, think about steering wheels. You can buy a £50 steering wheel. You can also buy a £1,500 steering wheel, right? What's the difference? Well, there's quite a lot of difference as it happens, and to do with the way that it's built and the force feedback inside of it and the quality and whether it's hand-stitched leather and There's so much difference. You have to decide as a consumer how much money you want to spend, whether you think it's a good return on your investment. How much of a simulation experience do you want? How good a quality item do you want? What can you afford? All of these things factor in, and they shape the price of any product. Yeah, the cost to manufacture, the profit margin, and how much the consumers are willing to spend on it. And then there's everything in between. Affordability is always driven by supply and demand. It's just one of those things, and technology is no different, Bandit. So if you're telling me, do you think I'll be able to get some hardcore, like, wonderful next-gen gear for next to no money? Well, the answer is no. Because by definition, it would command a higher price. And then the moment something else better comes along, the price of that will get pushed down. But then you're not on the next-gen new technology, are you? So think of it like phones. You buy a brand new phone and it costs the earth. But then in 3 or 4 years' time, your phone's worth next to nothing. Because technology has just completely swamped it, even though it's a perfectly usable phone. You know, that's just technology for you. It moves along at a blistering pace. Next question. Let's try and fit some more in before we're nearly there now. Gabrielle Wong, what would you prefer? Simulation games to constantly put out DLCs and updates, example ETS2, or a whole new game, example Farming Sim? Alright, so Farming Sim releases what, every 2 years? So they have like Farm Sim 15, Farm Sim 19, it's about to come out soon, we have Farm Sim 17 currently. So every 2 years they'll release to the, I think, PC and console market, and in between they do another one for the mobile platforms. That's their cycle. ETS2 came out 5 years ago, and since then is on the same release, if you like. It's the same thing, it just updates itself constantly with DLC, as you say. And then you've got things like X-Plane, which is somewhere in between in a way. It's like, if you think about X-Plane as a platform, and even P3D does this, they will release like X-Plane 10 or X-Plane 11, and it will sit like that for about 2 years, maybe a little bit more. On the way, they'll update it with incremental technologies. They'll build the platform up, as they're doing currently. X-Plane 12, assuming it's called that, will release when they've got the Vulkan stuff in there, which kind of separates it from the hardware better and improves the performance. If you've got a high-end graphics card, it will take more advantage of it. So that's the next big thing for them. So what X-Plane does is they sell you the platform, and then of course there's lots of third-party stuff you can get for it, and then every couple of years they'll release the next major version of it. And I kind of like that. I'm not saying that SCS is doing it wrong with the ETS2, but then SCS doesn't kind of every couple of years make a significantly better ETS, do they? Which is the model they could adopt. Instead, they kind of incrementally add to what they've already got and keep it up to date. But if ever they moved from DirectX 9 and suddenly did a DirectX 11 version, is that going to come along as an incremental free update, or are they going to sort of go, why, we'll call ourselves ETS 3 now? I don't know. I think financially they have to decide what works for them. Generally, it's driven by finance. That's why games release every couple of years, is because, frankly, they need you to buy it again. Because on the way, they've not been making that much money. That's why they do it. So I guess we'll have to see, because I don't know what ETS will do in the future, whether they'll just keep ETS2 and just keep it going forever. It's a good question. We'll have to wait and see. Next question is from Soep1. He says, what is your vision on Star Citizen? And do you think it will ever really become a great game in the future? Do you know what? How much has been spent on Star Citizen now? I think it's probably, I don't know what it's on, 200 million probably. It's an insane amount of money. And I'll admit, I've chucked money in there as well. Probably, I think it's somewhere between 100 and 200 pounds. I know somebody that spent 800. Yeah, they might even be watching this video now. They still think it's going to be the bee's knees, and they still keep buying these virtual ships. Yeah, they keep spending, like, every time Star Citizen come out and go, hey guys, we've got a new spaceship for you to buy in our unreleased world. And everybody's like, oh my god, oh, it's so amazing, let me just throw money at you, have my money, you know. I've kind of gone, Whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I've bought some stuff, and now I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to wait and see what happens. I'm mitigating my risk at this point. Because they've got some really big goals. They've got some big dreams, and I want to see some of it get delivered. I've seen the latest versions of Star Citizen, and, you know, some of the things you can do are pretty cool. The frame rates still seem to be lacking massively, but they're kind of, their objectives to create this EVE Online world meets Elite Dangerous meets, you know, whatever, flying from place to place. It's nuts what they're trying to do. And if they pull it off, they will significantly move forward the gaming industry on what's possible, and potentially kick off, you know, future projects of that magnitude, because people will always refer to it as, well, look, Star Citizen did it, and it took, you know, 5 years or whatever, but look what we got out of it. We got something very unique. If it falls flat on its face and doesn't deliver, it will set back the industry significantly. Because people will be very risk averse for a long time, because again, they'll look back at the Star Citizen and say, well, look what happened there when we tried to do that. So it's, in many ways, it's a significant, wow, speed camera. It's a significant experiment. It's a huge undertaking, there's no doubt about it. But we'll have to wait and see whether it actually succeeds or not. Right, that's the end of my questions that I wanted to ask. I timed that quite well, actually. I want to be in the left. I think I'd be in the left lane. Yeah, I just got to the end of my list as we're approaching the destination. I don't know how I managed to do that, but... Oh no, you scumbags. Why you have to go left? If you'd have been indicating, I wouldn't have sat behind you. Man. So don't forget, a link in the video description will take you to the form where you can submit your questions for the next theme, which is difference in generations. And also, you can suggest a theme with your question. I hope you enjoyed this series. I really need to do them more often, because they're quite fun, actually. Never know what questions I'm going to get thrown by you guys. So thank you. If your questions were not read out, I apologise. We do get a lot of questions, and there's only so many that I can ultimately cover in one video. The last one, the technology one, I had to make 2 videos, if you remember, just to fit it all in. Anyway, we got here on time. We didn't take any damage. I didn't get any tickets on the way, although I ran pretty close at one point. Come on, go green for me. And also, the mod spreadsheet contains the MAS and the, what's it called, Hemmel's Route Advisor. In case you want to try this truck or you want to try that Route Advisor. Let's get paid and let's get our XP. 606 kilometers, 9-hour journey, fuel consumed 252 litres, and a whole chunk of XP, which takes me to about halfway on level 93. Which is not bad, can't sniff at that. The horn on this thing's quite decent as well. So yeah, please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, guys, and don't forget, send me your questions and your theme suggestions, and let's keep this thing going. Until next time, take care. Happy trucking.